Hello everybody and welcome back to another update video. I didn't expect to be making another one of these so soon. I wasn't aware that we were also going to be getting an update of this scale at least so soon after the previous one, because I know that video for anyone who's watching these as they're coming out probably just came out yesterday. That's gonna be my guess. Technically, I'm recording this the same day, but I prefer to have the uploads go out in the morning, so that's what we're doing here. But for anyone who hasn't already heard the news, they are updating a whole bunch of characters. 22 characters are getting updated. And my understanding is, I'm gonna look into it a little more, but my understanding is that these updates are live and tournament legal updates as of immediately. So this is really exciting. A bunch of characters are getting updates that I'm really happy to see changed. So we're gonna jump right into it. We're gonna start going through these characters. I'm gonna be going somewhat off the top of my head for what's actually changed on these guys, but I will be I can English referencing Jarvis Protocol to pull up their original cards and just make sure I'm not missing anything. So they're in mostly alphabetical order. Towards the end, it's weird. It goes back up to like C or something. So we'll get there when we get there. But yeah. So the first one is Amazing Spider-Man, and you know what? I'm pretty sure I've already forgotten what's changed on him. I know Mastered Spider Sense has this little power gain thing here. So if you roll whenever he rolls dice after the effect is resolved, he's going to gain one power, and then or if he rolled a crit, and then that he still has his full rerolls on defensive dodge. So a little bit of extra power gen on Amazing Spider-Man, and then I believe the other change was whatever a spider can had its cost dropped down just a little bit. Yeah, it used to be 5 and it's now a 4 cost. So a little bit better power generation, a little bit less expensive to do whatever a spider can. But as far as I can tell, nothing else has changed on good old Peter here. But I do think this is a good change for him. Him having a little bit of extra power to go around is going to be really nice. That's something that I find is an issue with a lot of 5 threats, is that they can be very power hungry. And Peter's never been too bad for it, but it gives you a little bit of extra to throw around for stuff like witty banter and things like that. So I think that's going to be quite good for him. But yeah, one of the smaller changes, but I do think it's a solid one, and might make him see a little bit more play, which would be nice to see. Next up, we have Black Bolt, and Black Bolt had a pretty huge couple changes here. So first thing, they've bumped his health a little bit. I'm gonna pull up the old version just so I'm getting the numbers right here. But they bumped his health up from, I want to say, 5 on the front to 6, and let's see, how do I, any other corner to flip? There we go. 9 on the back I think hasn't changed. Yeah, that's the same. Energy Bolt is, it looks like, mostly the same, although it's gone up to 6 dice, which is pretty nice because it is his builder. Master Punch is now 1 cheaper. It used to cost 4, so that's solid for him. He also has a few other changes here. He has a King Serves His People. So when another allied character within 2 is targeted by an attack, this character may use this superpower. He becomes the target of the attack regardless of range and line of sight. This costs 1, so this is a 1 cost bodyguard that Black Bolt has, and that's going to help you, if you want to start getting that Whisper online, your opponent's going to have to really think about punching anyone who's close to Black Bolt, because you can force Black Bolt to take the hit and then wake back up with the Whisper online, which is going to be really good, because that was kind of one of the problems with him before, was your opponent could, for the most part, ignore him until they needed to flip him to, score points or something. So that's going to be really good for him. In addition, Focus Power has been changed. It used to, I believe, be used to add dice to his attack rolls, and it cost him 3. Now that has been changed. Where is it? I totally lost it. During the power phase, he's going to gain an additional power, which he did not have before, so he definitely appreciates that. So yeah, he's going to be naturally gaining power a little bit faster. He's got a bodyguard now. His builder hits a little bit harder than it used to. So just in general, his power gain is going to be a lot better. He doesn't have to pay to add the dice, although of course his builder is 1 dice less than it would have been when he was adding the dice before. So a little bit of give and take there. But overall, he's a lot more efficient than he used to be. Already kind of seeing a trend between the two 5 threats here. So Yeah, no, I think overall, I don't think anything else changed. It looks like the throw on the Master Punch is for the most part the same. Whisper, I think, got up to 10 dice from 9 dice. Yeah, but otherwise, I don't think it's changed at all either. Um, yeah, overall, though, I think these are really, really good changes for Black Bolt. I mean, having a little bit more health on the front is going to be huge. Having that bodyguard is going to be really, really nice, even though he doesn't really have crazy good defensive tech to back it up. Although, anti-gravitation field is nothing to scoff at. I mean, that's basically a vibranium shield from a Steve player. Oh, and he's 443 now, whereas he was 442 before, so that's also really good for him. He can take a mystic hit a little bit better. So yeah, I think this is huge changes for Black Bolt, and we'll hopefully be seeing a lot more of him and Inhumans in general. So that's awesome. Next, we have Felicia. She got nerfed a little bit. It's not too bad. She also got a little bit of a buff to go with it. We'll see what it does to her in the competitive scene. I think the main reason, one of the two main reasons people brought her will no longer be as significant. So, of course, her first thing, her buffs, if her attack deals damage on the cat claws, it now gives the bleed. I'm pretty sure it didn't do that before. And then she also has bad luck, which she had they can't modify their attack dice before, but now they also don't roll additional crits in their attacks against her. So that's also really, really nice. Helps with her survivability a little bit because even though she had the can't modify their dice, she's definitely still on the squishier side with 5-3-3-3. So that's going to be pretty solid for her. Not letting them explode crits will be relatively good for the dice math for her. And unfortunately, her big nerf. I don't know if I should say unfortunately. She's had this coming for some time, but Master Cat Burglar is now an action. So unfortunately for Mr. Felicia Hardy, Mrs. Felicia Hardy, she won't be stealing objectives quite as often as she used to be. But still, obviously, every objective steal in the game is quite powerful if you can use it at the right time. So I think she's still going to have play for that, and she's definitely still going to have play for the stagger. She can still throw it on Troublemaker just as easily as she could before. So I think Felicia's still got a lot of play. But yeah, that's her change. Going forward, we have Blade. This one I'm very, very excited about. Now, for the most part, not much has changed on him, but one big change here is that the throwing glaives now have a hit pursuit. So if the attack deals damage, he can advance towards the target character small. This is really, really big for Blade because despite being in the affiliation that gives Bump in the Night, which is one of the really, really powerful movement leaderships, he didn't really have great movement for himself. So having that is really good. But yeah, as far as I am aware, that's the only change they made to Mr. Blade here. But I think it's a really good one. It'll be really nice for Midnight Suns to have that little buff going on there. But otherwise, he's pretty much the exact same. If there's other changes, of course, that you guys noticed that I didn't, feel free to let me know down below. Next, we have Daredevil. I'm very, very excited about this one. So I'm going to pull up the old Daredevil's card because I am not super familiar with what he did before. So let's go ahead and pull him up here. There he is. So, big change right out the gate is he has a leadership now, the Marvel Knights, and this is going to be for defenders. Once per turn, an allied character may reroll a number of its attack dice equal to the number of enemy characters within 2 of itself. So kind of playing into his Devil's Deliverance thing that's going to get stronger based on how many allies or enemies are surrounding him. Now all of his allies are going to be gaining the same thing when he is the leader. So that's going to be an interesting one. I don't know really how powerful that's going to be. I think a lot of the time it's going to end up being 1, maybe 2 rerolls. So like as a once per turn, that's still solid, but of course in the earlier turns you'll be getting less of it and so on. So we'll see how that shakes out, but it's really nice to see defenders get a second leadership and to see Daredevil have a leadership, and hopefully Daredevil's going to get to see a little bit more play because the rest of his card has been updated as well. His physical defenses went up to 4 from the previous 3. However, he is still only 5-6 for health, so nothing too huge on that side of things. His strike, I don't believe, has changed at all. Still got the wild stun, but baton hook has changed a little bit. So notably, it also ignores stealth now, and the trigger to pull them in is now a hit instead of a wild. So that's going to be quite relevant. It's going to be a lot easier to get that pull trigger, which is going to in turn help with the Marvel Knights leadership and your Devil's Deliverance once you get those going. And ignoring stealth is nice. That's a new thing. I don't think we've seen attacks that ignore stealth before, so that's cool to see. And then Devil's Deliverance, I think, got an extra something. Right, yeah, so it changed a little bit. So before it added 2 dice for each non-dazed enemy character and started out at 2, it cost 5. It still costs 5, but it's starting out at 6, but only adding 1 die. I think overall that's definitely a buff. You can start Devil's Deliverance, it's a minimum 7 dice now. If you've got 2 enemies, it becomes an 8 dice targeting 2 models, and that's already really, really good. So yeah, I think that's quite solid. The push was always guaranteed, so that hasn't changed at all. Man Without Fear, I believe, changed slightly. It's also gotten aggressive now, whereas before it was just a crackback. Now it is a aggressive and then a crackback. So, they don't even have to deal damage, so it's not quite aggressive. But basically, he's going to get to advance towards them and then hit them back. That's going to be really good for him. That's going to help him get up the table and help him not be just kind of shot down by ranged attackers. Still has radar sense, which is just as good as it always has been. And then on the flip side, the Devil ability is going to be costing him 2. We'll go ahead and flip him over here and see what changed. I don't think too much has. If it had any skulls, he's going to take a damage, cost of 0. And it always costs 2, so that looks like it is the exact same. So no other changes for Mr. Daredevil, but he is probably going to be a big deal for defenders now, and might even start seeing some play in some other places. I could see him coming back into something like Web Warriors now that that pull is a lot more consistent. Amongst other things, I mean, also just being a little bit bulkier now as well. I think Daredevil might have some real play in a few places now, which is really exciting. Dr. Voodoo, unfortunately, also taken a bit of a nerf here, although in some ways it could be considered a side grade. There's an argument for either way here. So right out the gate, Spirit Venom has been changed a little bit. Really, all that's been done is it's added a second trigger to it. It's got a double hit Spiritual Strength. After the attack is resolved, if the target character is size 2 or less, he's going to throw them small. So that's interesting because he's lost the Spiritual Strength ability on his card. So he no longer has a superpower throw, but he has one tied to his attack, although on a little bit of a difficult to hit trigger, so we'll see how often that'll actually be coming up. In theory, you can do it twice per turn now, so that's really good. But also, notably, it's not an optional throw, but it is any direction, so that's going to be interesting how that works out. But yeah, I think that's a solid ability to have there. The trigger's not super consistent, but I think it's an interesting way of removing it from here, which was partially because he had so much text on his card that they needed to kind of trim down a little bit. Otherwise, Staff of Legbra hasn't changed at all. His defensive line hasn't changed at all. He still gets the extra 2 dice from the Brother Daniel, but Brother Daniel has changed a little bit. So actually a fair bit. So first of all, he is now, I'm not gonna read it word for word, but basically when Voodoo is dazed, the Brother Daniel token will come back to him. I think I said Brother Voodoo. When Dr. Voodoo is dazed, the Brother Daniel will come back to him. So he doesn't get to keep it on you when he gets dropped anymore, which is really, really big. That was one of the major complaints about Voodoo in terms of him being too powerful, was that the only way to remove the token was to actually KO him. So that's definitely a big change. And then in addition, it just specifies that you cannot hold objective tokens now, whereas before it also meant you couldn't contest or, I believe, interact with objectives. So now it's not going to affect secures basically at all, whereas it still affects extracts pretty much the same way it did before. So that's definitely a pretty rough hit for Voodoo to be taking. In addition, moving the Brother Daniel token back to him now costs 3 instead of the 2 it cost before. So he's definitely taken a hit here. I think he's still definitely going to have a fair bit of play, but it hurts him in more ways than I'm sure he would like to admit, losing so much on the Brother Daniel. But I think he's still a very solid model. He's still going to see play in the places where he's good, and especially the places where he's affiliated. I think he definitely still has a space in something like Avengers or where else was he? Was he in Defenders before? He might have been Convocation, places like those will definitely still be running him. So I think he's still definitely going to be a solid model. He just might not be as dominant as he used to be. Moving on, we have Elektra. So one of the big changes they made for her is she now has an actual gainer. Ancient Throwing Blades is going to be a gainer, and she still has her out for blood. So if she deals damage, it'll end up gaining her 2. So that's going to be really, really good. I'm going to pull up her card real quick, make sure nothing else changed, but I think that was the big one. Yeah, we'll go ahead and grab Elektra's card here. And let's see real quick. So Assassin's Step always costs 2, Martial Prowess always costs 2, Impale always costs 5. Notably, she is up 1 physical defense, so 4-3-3, getting the same treatment as the original Daredevil in that regard. But I believe that is the only change made to her. So, yeah, I mean, one of her biggest issues was that she had really bad power generation before, so making this basically a double gainer is actually quite good for her. Yeah, I think that's a solid change. We'll see if it's enough for her to start seeing the table, but in theory, she's definitely a lot better than she was before, so that's good to see. Next, we have Hela. And so Hela's had a few changes here. She's still 6'4", and for the most part works the same way, but Claim Soul is now only 1 cost, so you can do it twice per turn, which is really, really nice, or twice per turn, assuming you don't have power from any other source. So that's going to be really, really good. Her builder is now range 3, which is really nice for her. And I'm going to check her spender and see if that changed at all. I don't think it did, but we're going to double check here real quick. If it has bleed, doesn't count wilds. If it has bleed, doesn't count wilds. Yep, so that's pretty much the exact same. Oh, it is down to 3 cost from 4 cost, so that's nice to see. In addition, this now specifies it can only be used on her builder or her expensive spender. So you can't feed souls into Claim Soul to build them faster. It also is only once per turn, which I think it was before. Yes, it was. So yeah, that's relevant. I definitely used it on Claim Soul more than I used it on any other attack, especially when she was on her flip side. So that's definitely a relevant thing. She also got Death's Embrace. This is a totally new power for her. It's going to cost her 2. She's going to choose an enemy within 3. She's going to get to advance them towards, she's going to get to advance towards them, small. Then, if this character is within 1 of the chosen characters, she's going to roll 4 dice. For each crit and wild, she's going to deal a damage. And then for each damage that they take, she is going to remove 1 damage. So she's going to heal up a little bit on that. So that's really good. Gives her some out of activation movement. And yeah, I think that's just quite solid for her in general. Now, it's a little awkward because all of her attacks are now range 3 or 4, so she doesn't actually have a reason to get that close other than to deal the damage and maybe heal up a little bit. But it's a cool ability anyways. She does lose it on the flip side in favor of Queen and Goddess of Death, which Queen, or no, sorry, she always has Goddess of Death. Queen, of course, being the ability that stops her from being KO'd if she has 3 souls. And as far as I understand, nothing else has changed there. So, yeah, overall, I think that's an interesting change for her. I'd say having the ability to spend souls on Claim Soul go away is a little annoying, but I think overall this is definitely still a buff for her. Death's Embrace is really cool. And I mean, yeah, they didn't change a crazy amount on her, but making Claim Soul something you can do twice per turn is really, really good. So that's quite solid for her. Don't think it's game changing, but might bring her onto the table once in a while, which would be really exciting to see. Moving on, we have Malekith, and the only change that I could find for this guy, and I'm not going to go through because he is just a wall of text, but the only 2 changes I could find for this guy is they've dropped him down to 9 health on the front from 10, and Blade of Midnight no longer has a Wild Pierce. Those are both really, really important things. The Wild Pierce made the 7 dice energy attack just way too scary, even for a 7 threat. So bringing that down a little bit is great to see. We'll see if maybe that was too much. I heard people were kind of suggesting that it be swapped out for a different condition, or sorry, for a condition instead of a pierce. So we'll see if that was too much. And then dropping him down 1 health on the front, I think is totally reasonable. He's still a 9/7, so he's still super bulky, especially since he has the critical thing that Domino has. So yeah, I think overall Malekith is still a totally solid model. I think he was always immune to Hex and Stun. I'll double check that real quick. Like I said, I'm not gonna spend time going through his entire card because he's Malekith and he just has an absolute wall of text. But yeah, he was always immune to Hex and Stun, and that hasn't changed. So yeah, overall, solid nerf to him. I think he's still gonna see play. He's still gonna do pretty much the same things he was doing before. We'll see if losing Pierce is enough to kind of shove him out of being the kind of menace in the meta that he is. I haven't done the dice math on it myself to see how much worse that makes him, but I know it was a pretty consistent Pierce before, so that's basically dropping like one very high chance success from his dice pool. So we'll see how that shakes out for him. But overall, I think it's fine for him to get a little bit of another nerf down because he was still very very dominant. Moving on, we have Ronan. Ronan didn't get crazy big changes here. Notably here, Kree Justice says it's a zero cost, but it is almost definitely not a zero cost. This is probably a typo. It's most likely either what it was before or maybe one less, but probably not a huge change. The only thing we noticed when we were looking at this earlier, because Reed and I did look through this ourselves shortly before I went to make this video, is that he's now 7/7 for health. I'll double check real quick, see if any of his other things changed that are just jumping out at me. But as far as we're aware, that's the only thing they changed on him. He was 6/7 before, maybe? Oh, 6/6. So that's actually quite nice. One health on each side. But yeah, the push is still wild size 4. Throw is still wild size 4. I don't think any of these changed any significant amount. So yeah, I mean, overall though, quite good. I think him having a little bit of extra bulk kind of brings him in line with a lot of other four threats. So hopefully he'll start to see a little bit more play again. I think he was never necessarily a bad model. He was just a little below the curve. So that might be enough to pump him back into kind of regular play. So that'll be cool to see for Mr. Ronan. Another buff for the Inhumans and also Guardians, which whether or not they needed it is a little up for debate, but I think it'll be Inhumans that get more use out of that than anyone else. Next up, we have Taskmaster. The only change we noticed on Mr. Taskmaster is that the shield throw is now a gainer. I think that's it. I'll double check again real quick, make sure none of his other things have had small changes. Let's see, Taskmaster right here. Cost two, cost two. That's the same. Yeah, I'm gonna go with nothing else has changed for this lad. But yeah, I mean that's a very solid benefit for him having that be a gainer. Gives you a little bit more incentive to kind of be okay with sitting back for the first turn or so and just throwing a shield. So that's quite solid. I look forward to eventually picking up this model. On the topic, by the way, of the kind of odd models out, the Punisher model isn't included in this document, but apparently he has been added to the Defenders affiliation, so he's no longer completely unaffiliated, which is really exciting to see. I figured I should. This is probably the best place to throw that out there because he comes in the same box, and Rogue Agent and completely unaffiliated are kind of opposites. Next up, we have the Mad Titan himself, Thanos. And only one change was made on Thanos, but it is a relatively big deal. At least only one change that we could see. I think his leaderships, for the most part, are the same. And yeah, I don't think they hit his health at all. I'm actually going to double check that now. But the one change that I know they did make, oh, they actually, yeah, 8/9, 8/9. Yeah, that's the same. The one change that they did make to Mr. Thanos here is to his cosmic portal here. So he still loses it on the flip side, very, very notably. But he's only gonna be able to do this once per turn now, whereas before I believe it was a character can only be affected by this once per turn. Now he can only do this once per turn. So that's a pretty big deal. It makes he's still a very powerful control piece between that space and Mind Stone, but it makes him a little bit more limited on what he can do. So yeah, I think that's a very very solid, understandable nerf to him that definitely doesn't make him unplayable in any way. I think it's going to be totally fine for him. And yeah, I think that's that's all I have to say on that one. I think it's a good nerf for the health of the game, and I don't think it's taking Thanos into the ground or anything like that, so that's quite good. Next up, we have Thor, the Prince of Asgard. So he is getting a couple small changes here, which might matter in a big way. So he's 443 now, whereas before I believe he was 44. Or, sorry, he's 444 now. Before he was 443. He's up to 7 health on the front side, still 8 on the back. So that's actually a big deal. Him only being 6 on the front always felt bad. Strike, hammer throw, mostly, if at all, unchanged. I believe they're both exactly what they were before. But God of Thunder now gives out shock, and is only a 4 cost now, whereas before I believe it was a 6. So that's a lot better. You actually might use that once in a while. Leadership hasn't changed at all for Asgard, as far as I can tell, hasn't changed at all. Strongest Avenger is the same, Asgardian is the same, but he has immunity to shock and stun, which I believe he didn't have either of those before. So, I mean, yeah, about time. Those are, I mean, stun's really nice, but I believe he wasn't immune to shock before, and he really should have been. So, I think these are great changes for Thor. I don't think they necessarily make him the most competitive model on the planet, anyways. He still has some of the consistency issues he had before, but at least now he can take a little bit more of a hit. He can dish out an area attack, which is quite good now. I think having that hand out auto shocks and be a little bit less power makes him a lot more willing to do that, so that's quite nice. And yeah, the immunity to shock and stun is really good for him as well. So yeah, I think overall quite solid change for the Prince of Asgard here. Moving on next, we have Bucky. Bucky has one change, but it's a very, very important change. Rapid fire is now a wild trigger. That is really, really big for Mr. Barnes here. That used to be a hit trigger and it was super consistent. Now it's a wild trigger that's probably not going to be going off nearly as consistently as it was before. I think he's probably still a solid model. I mean, Got Your Back is still a great ability. Um, just definitely not to the degree he was before. I think he's still going to see play in Shield and maybe a few other places, especially places he's affiliated. But I don't think he's going to quite be the same kind of massive threat at 3 threat that he was before. So I think overall that's probably another change that's better for the health of the game. But yeah, I know a lot of people are going to be very disappointed with this because that does bring him down a fair bit. But we'll see how it shakes out in the long run for Mr. Barnes here. But yeah, that's as far as I know the only change on him. And yeah, moving on. Next up, we have Wong. I was very, very excited to see Wong in this list, but unfortunately, it's a very, very small change that they made to him. They just bumped up his physical defense to 3. As far as I can tell, they didn't change anything. I play this model a lot, so I feel like I should be more confident about that. But yeah, it just feels weird that that's the only change that I'm seeing on him. The Faithful Assistance still costs 2, still gains 1 to an ally within 3, meditates the same. I don't think anything else has changed on this. I mean, it's a good change for him. Him going up to 3 physical defense means he's not quite as vulnerable to things like throws. So that's really, really nice for him. But yeah, overall, this is probably the smallest change on this entire document. So yeah, I mean, I'm not complaining. I ran Wong tons of places, so any buff is something I'll take. Next up, we have Cable, and Cable had a lot of changes. So yeah, I'm gonna have to pull up his card for this because I never played Cable before. So let me let me grab Cable's card here real quick. But I know he has some big changes that are gonna be really, really relevant for Cable himself just as a model, but also for X-Force where his leadership comes in. So first of all, we have the plasma rifle. Well, actually, first of all, he is going up to 7/7, where he was 6/7 before. So that's already nice. Just a nice little quality of life thing for him. Plasma rifle has gained this. If the target is within 3, he may reroll up to 2 dice in the attack roll. So that's going to be really, really good for him. Giving him a little bit more consistency on that builder and that wild incinerate is going to be really, really nice. Gives him a reason to get in a little closer as well. Exani-san is down to being a 5 cost from the 6 it was before, and his leadership is totally changed. So Before it was each allied character may reroll one die in their attack rolls per turn. Now it says each allied character may reroll one die in their attack rolls once per turn. So that part hasn't changed, but now it includes skull results. If they do and the enemy character is within 3, the enemy character does not benefit from cover during the attack. So, I mean, it's not the biggest change in the world to his leadership, but it is a big deal. Being able to reroll skulls will occasionally be very, very relevant. And if the enemy characters within 3 ignoring cover is also quite solid. I mean, that's going to be beneficial against characters that always have cover, stuff like Rocket, and of course just anything that's kind of using using terrain and kind of gunlining you up or anything like that. It's gonna be a solid way of kind of getting around that. So yeah, they've added enough things to that leadership that I think it's quite solid now. Body slide by 1, as far as I can tell, hasn't changed. As a matter of fact, I'm pretty sure everything else on his card is the same. So yeah, I mean, these are pretty good changes for Cable. I think it's gonna make him it's gonna make X-Force a lot better for sure, and he might also start seeing play in places like X-Men and stuff now. Yeah, I think this is a very good change for Mr. Cable. Next up, we have Colossus, and this is actually going to be a really nice one. So they've bumped him up to a medium mover. That was by far his biggest issue before, is that he was a small mover. So already massive change for Mr. Colossus here. They've increased the range on X-Slam to 3. Previously it was 2. So not a crazy huge change there, because realistically, if he's got the power for that, he was probably already within 2 of whatever he was trying to punch. But it definitely could be relevant. It's still got the automatic stun and the wild stagger, so not much change there. The next big thing is going down to organic steel. He cannot be pushed by enemy effects anymore, which is absolutely huge. One of the best ways to deal with Colossus before was just to kind of shove him away, whereas now you just can't do that. So that's really, really good for him. Otherwise, it doesn't look like anything else has changed. I was just double checking if he was always 7 on the other side. But as far as I can tell, everything else is the same for Mr. Colossus. But those are really big changes for him. Bumping him up to a medium move is amazing. And then also saying he can't be pushed on top of that. Suddenly, I think this model has a lot more play, and we'll actually start seeing him on the table more often, which is really exciting because I think he's a great looking model. So yeah, that's awesome to see. Next up, we have Cyclops, and this is one that I know the X-Men fans were very, very excited for. So, I don't think they changed much about his defensive line, but I'm gonna double check that real quick. 4-3-3, 6 health. Yeah, that's the same. But Optic Blast has been changed a little bit, so the push is now size 3 or less as opposed to the size 2 it was before, so that's quite good for him. He also has wild hit speed of sight. After this attack is resolved, this character may make an additional Optic Blast attack. This additional attack may not target the original character and does not have the speed of sight special rule. So that's solid. In theory, this model can shove 4 models in a turn. Obviously, those triggers aren't going to be that consistent, but that's a really nice change for him. I'm already kind of eyeing him and thinking like, oh, Steve, new Steve might like this a little bit, so that would be kind of cool. Optic Devastation, I think, got brought down in power cost a little bit. Yeah, never mind, it's actually still 4. But it did change from Concussive Force to Suppression, so now they're losing a power for each wild as opposed to before where they were just losing 1 power if you got any wilds. So yeah, that's in general, I think, a buff for that as well. So 2 nice buffs there, and then his leadership is going to be totally different. So when an allied character deals damage to an enemy character with an attack, another allied character within 5 of the attacking character may gain 1 power after the attack is resolved. The character may gain only 1 power as a result of this leadership ability per turn. So this is kind of an inverse A-Force leadership, but we were also likening it to Red Skull 1, but like a less selfish version. So I gave the example when I was talking with Reed about this of Domino. So if Domino goes ahead and shoots, 4 times with her rapid fire, and she does damage on all 4 attacks, she's going to be handing out 4 power, 1 to 4 different characters within 5 of Cyclops on her turn, which is really, really good. It turns out. So yeah, this is gonna be a really cool attrition leadership for X-Men, which I think is gonna be awesome. or just in general, I think this leadership will give them a good power generation leadership, which will give them some interesting plays down some avenues that they might not have been really playing much of before. The rest of his card here hasn't changed. Field Leader, Hit and Run, and Quick Draw are all the same, but all of those were solid abilities before. So, I mean, I think Cyclops is actually pretty solid now. That leadership is fantastic. I think it's really, really interesting. It's going to get a lot of play, and I think it's worth building lists around Cyclops now, which is something I didn't think I was going to say a week ago. So that's really, really exciting. Yeah, I think Cyclops is quite good. He's suddenly a very, very good model. He's got a great leadership. His optic blast is a lot better than it used to be. This model had a really nice upgrade here, and we'll see how it shakes out. But I think this is going to be really big for X-Men on top of all the other changes that they're recently about to get. So next up, we have Deadpool. So not a crazy amount has changed for him, but a few things have. It's weird because he feels like he kind of got side graded in some ways. So, first of all, his builder now has the double wild stab. After the attack is resolved, he may make another stab attack, but it must target the original character, and it does not have the stab special rule. So, not a very likely trigger, but when it goes off, it'll be quite good. Bang no longer has bang bang bang, but bang bang has been reduced in its or has been increased in its consistency, I believe. So it's a wild hit, must make another, or may make another bang attack, does not have the bang bang special rule, and must target the original target character. I mean that's solid on a builder. It's a wild hit trigger though, a gainer. It's a wild hit trigger though, so it's not super consistent, but it's not terrible either. Going into his spender here, I'm going to double check because I think they might have dropped the cost on it a little bit, but otherwise I don't think it's changed. Nope, 263, it looks like it's the exact same. And then I know one or two other things were changed down here. I believe you can't spell legendary without leg day is brand new. So this is a 2-cost superpower, which is going to place him within 2 of his current position, and it's a once per turn. I mean, that's just quite a good ability. I mean, tons of models have this at this point, between Hulk, Spider-Woman, and there's so many. I'm not, the list goes on forever. 2-cost gamma leaps are great. That's going to be a solid ability, and yeah, there's not much more to say about it than that. Otherwise, everything else seems to be, for the most part, the same. So no changes on the front there. However, on the back, he still can't spell legendary without leg day. It just also has rolled in the karate with all right, now it's serious, which I don't know if that's what it was called on the flip side, but oh yeah, it was. Yeah, these are just one ability now because they didn't have the space for both of them with the leg day ability. So yeah, overall, oh, I didn't even look at his spender before. Did that change at all? No, that looks like it's the exact same. All right, I just wanted to make sure I didn't miss anything there. But yeah, I think there's some interesting changes there. I think overall it's definitely a buff with the place being a thing now. That's quite a solid ability for him to have. The bang bang changes. Oh, it looks like the first one actually is the same. What's it called? Same trigger, so that didn't actually change at all, which is a little annoying because you still don't have good odds of getting the third one. Oh, but it is a builder or a gainer now, which it wasn't before, so that's actually quite good for him. I take it back, actually. That's a buff in almost every way because the odds of getting bang 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 were never great. So yeah, I think overall that's still a buff for him. It just feels like a very light one. I don't know if it's going to be enough to make him see much play, but it's definitely neat to see that he's getting something, so that's cool. Next up, we have Jean Grey. She has now a Skull Pierce on Psionic Bolt, which she didn't have before. I believe health-wise, she's the exact same, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. As far as I understand, hasn't changed at all. Her telekinetic force is now a 5-cost, whereas before it was a 6-cost. And lastly, she gains an additional power during the power phase. Before it was 1, now it's 2. So I think in general that's really good changes for her. The Skull Pierce is interesting because she doesn't count skulls as successes. So the Skull Pierce is kind of a like you fail, like this is technically a failure on the attack, but if they blocked one, then I guess it can be counted as a success. So it's interesting in that regards. I think that's a neat ability or a neat trigger to have a pierce on. But otherwise, not much has changed with her. Gaining a little bit of extra power and not having to spend much for her spender is really, really nice, especially because now that it's specifically two additional, meaning she's going to be starting every round with three, she can use battlefield manipulation or matter transmutation. Um, she can use that without having to, what's it called? Without having to actually like shoot anything or gain power. So that's going to be really nice for, because I mean, even turn one, you could double walk and then shove a character off of a middle point or something like that. So that's quite solid for her. I think it's definitely a big buff for her. We'll see if it's enough for her to actually see the table very much. But on top of that, she does also going to have access to Cerebro when that hits. So that's going to be solid for her as well. Moving on, we have Storm. Now, this one I know a lot of X-Men players were very scared about what was going to be changed on her because there was rumors circulating that she was going to get a nerf specifically on the leadership. And while that is definitely true, it doesn't seem like it's as bad as people feared. So, first, I'm going to double check that Hurricane didn't change at all, but I don't think it did. Let me just go and I'm going to just search for it because this list is way too long. Um, but yeah, that looks like it's the exact same. So big. Oh, sorry, it's up one dice. It went from 5 to 6. So that's a small little buff, which I think she'll appreciate a little bit. But importantly, we'll get into the leadership. But she also has Eye of the Storm has been brought down to only being 2 costs to buff her attacks, which is a really nice buff for her. She definitely needed that. Um, that was something where she didn't really get to do it super often before, so now she'll want to do that a little bit more consistently, and it'll be nice for her. The big thing is her leadership, of course. The X-Men hop now costs 1 power, which it didn't before, so that's going to be a huge change. In some ways, in other ways, it's not because of things like first class. They're still going to have all of their turn one plays for the most part online, but it will matter for some characters for some plays. So I think it's definitely a fair nerf to the leadership, but it's not going to actually be taking away a lot of X-Men's best strengths, which is good. I think that's healthy for the game and X-Men players to still be able to do a lot of the things that they like doing as X-Men, but they're going to have to pay a little bit for it now to do it on future turns. So that's solid. And then additionally, instead of having cover when an enemy characters are attacking outside of two, now she's granting a single reroll, which actually, as Reed and I discussed, is kind of a side grade. Overall, it is definitely worse against most lists. That's going to be worse than cover because of obviously rolling one defense die versus just changing it to a success is a little bit riskier. But yeah, the specific scenario for me is I play a lot of Captain America, both flavors of Captain America, and of course they have shield throws which ignore cover. So weirdly enough, this actually is better against specifically my list and probably a handful of Avengers lists out there where most of my attacks are either at range two or are a shield throw. So I just thought it was interesting that it's actually a bit of a side grade, even though it's clearly intended to be more of a nerf, and I think in the grand scheme of things definitely is. But yeah, overall, I think this leadership is still incredibly good. It's still going to be played a lot. Um, yeah, I don't have much more to say about it. It's definitely a nerf, but not too huge of one. And Storm overall getting a buff, that really helps her and X-Men as an affiliation as well. So yeah, in general, I think this is still very positive for the X-Men players. Moving on, next we have Wolverine. And as far as we could tell, they didn't change anything too crazy on him. They bumped him up to 6 health on the flip side, so he's not quite as squishy on the flip now, which is really nice for him, because only having 5 felt really bad before. In addition, they changed the best at what I do down to being 2 cost instead of 3, which makes it something you can do a lot earlier. I personally think this is a really good change for him. We'll see if it's enough to really make him see the table all that much. Still, I think new Logan is arguably still better in a lot of ways, but this one is at least a little bit more interesting now and a little bit more playable. So hopefully we'll see him on the table once in a while. I'm glad to see that they did go back and change something on him and didn't just leave us with, oh, you guys have a good Wolverine, why do you need two? So that's good to see. But yeah, I don't know if it was the biggest deal in the world, the things that they changed on him. I'll check real quick to see if they also changed the cost on his spender or anything like that. But as far as I know, the only change was the increase to his health and the decrease to the best I am at what I do. Um, yeah, as far as I can tell, that is the only change. 432 is still the same there, so yeah. But overall, I think that's still a solid change for Logan. And that is going to do it. That is all of the characters that they updated during this update. So 22 characters in total. My voice is feeling that number right now. Um, these are really exciting. I'm really, really glad to see that they're doing this because there was a lot of talk that they might never do a character update like this again. And I'm really glad that they are because I think that's super important to having a healthy competitive environment for a game. So that's really exciting for me. I'm glad to hear that. And I think a lot of these changes are good. I think some of them might have been a little bit too light, but I don't think any of them were too heavy, and that's usually the direction I would prefer. I think some of them are a little concerning. Like we'll have to see if Black Cat is still going to be played nearly as much as she was before. But I think she'll still have a home in at least, at the very minimum, I think she'll still have a home in Web Warriors, if nowhere else. So that's good. She'll still be played somewhere. But yeah, I don't think anyone was really nerfed into the ground by this. I've heard a little bit of doom and gloom around Voodoo, but I still think he's quite good, at least in his home affiliations. And like, yeah, he's still got some solid play. I mean, 446 as a defensive line plus a 5 dice Mystic attack with Sap power. I think that's almost argument enough to bring him with or without Brother Daniel. So he's gonna still have play in a few places. And yeah, I think in general, the buffs across the board were quite nice. I think Black Bolt and Daredevil are kind of the clear winners here. Oh, and Cable. Cable's also a huge winner of this. But a lot of these characters getting some of these small little quality of life changes, they're gonna really appreciate the Colossus and Cyclops, of course. How could I not mention them? Those guys are probably the biggest winners here. But yeah, I think this was a solid update. So, anyways, as I said, my voice is absolutely dead after reading off these 22 characters. So we are gonna wrap up the video here. Thankfully, able to keep it under an hour again, which is really good because I know you guys have more valuable things to do with your time. So yeah, that is going to do it for this video, this kind of update. Probably not going to be getting a battle report out this weekend. If we do, it's going to be streamed, but I've just been making a bunch of these videos and haven't really gotten around to actually recording a battle report. Hopefully we'll be getting one out next week, although we may be going down to every other week for battle report style content because I am back in school, so time is a lot more limited for me, and these videos I can still crunch out because these obviously take about this, well, not even the same amount of time to record, but on top of that, they take almost no time to do any editing or anything like that for these, so they're a lot faster to be able to put out for you guys. But I do want to get battle reports going again. The last one was a live stream, and if we do one this weekend, it will be a live stream that would be happening on Sunday, and I'll try to have that like the thumbnail and the scheduled stream up at some point Saturday night if it is happening. If not, though, I will guarantee that a battle report of some form is coming out next weekend. Maybe with some of the new X-Men stuff, we'll see. I don't know if I'll have time to get a Nightcrawler or a Kitty Pryde painted up in time for that, but we'll see. I make no guarantees either way, but definitely if we do get a battle report out, I'm gonna want to try at least one or two of the new characters on here with their buffs. So something new in some way will be hitting the table, and we'll just have to wait and see what that's gonna be. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you guys are excited about these changes. Let me know down below which ones you guys are most excited for or most disappointed by. If one of your favorite models got nerfed or something like that, do let me know. I'm curious to see what everybody thinks. But yeah, I'm super excited, and yeah, like I said, I think this is super great for the health of the game that updates like these are happening. But anyways, I have rambled on long enough at the end of this video. So like if you liked, subscribe if you guys are new. You're not going to want to miss all the battle reports we're going to have coming out over the next few months with all the new released characters and of course these new changes now. So if you want to see how all these guys are going to be hitting the table and what they're going to do, then definitely stay tuned for that stuff. I'm super excited and looking forward to all of it. But otherwise, that is it for now. So have a great day, everybody. Peace.